Hey Peyton, nice to see you again on this beautiful day. And this time with a quote by Kuon Yamada from The Gateless Gate. Do not seek the truth. Only cease to cherish opinions. The truth is not a thing to be found, but the event of the unobstructed universe functioning. How does it all work, Peyton? What is truth in that opinion? In that quote?
In that uncherished opinion. Yes. Good to be back with you, friend. This is pointing us towards something really important and so easy to forget when we are reading books, when we are recording podcasts, when we are having conversations, when we're defining things, when we're thinking. It is easy to forget that there is a map, that there is language, that there are descriptors and labels that we put upon reality. This system of sounds and symbols, concepts and images of language. And then there is the territory. There is that is real, that is beyond the map. There is that we experience directly, that does not need an intermediary of language and words and concepts and groupings and categories and propositions. This is pointing us toward the notion that truth goes deeper than just our labeling of reality, than just the static black and white propositions that we can put upon reality. That truth is something that we can encounter, that we can feel in our being, and that is fundamentally tied to the now. We cannot experience truth out there, back then, in the future. It is only available now. And truth is something that we can recognize, not necessarily merely within words, but something that can speak to us directly in our intuition, through our heart, that can be embodied, and that can move us and breathe us. This, I think, is the richest experience of truth that is available to us. So what is this truth? How do we encounter it? How do we orient ourselves toward truth?
Great question. And I think the Buddhists got it already when they said truth is just being as it is. When they say it is what it is, they have a word for it. It's called tathata. It's very funny because 10 years ago in the retreat, there was this old abbot who always spoke this English when he taught the Buddhist philosophy. But this English I would not really understand well because he was so weak in his pronunciation and so on. And then he said tathata. And I was like, what does that mean? Even together or whatever. No, it was actually the word. I realized it later. They call it the being, the so being of itself. And this tautology, it is what it is, refers to a moment which shows itself to us, and also to the divergence of subjectivity and objectivity. It is what it is, but maybe you will experience it much differently. So you cannot judge the richness of the thing itself, what is, just from your experience. There are many layers and many perspectives on the events which are unfolding. The universe unfolding is a process, and it shows itself from different perspectives to other people differently. And people with different minds and perceptions even experience it differently as well. So how do we get along with this challenge of how do we convey what we think and perceive and experience as truth when other people don't see it, or even when other people tell a whole different story of what it actually is? Is this then that all and everyone lives a different kind of movie where the experience of reality is distorted for everyone? Or is there a narrative, or is there a thing which is more true than another? So how do we distinguish between just narratives and between events which are themselves as events unfolding in the universe, being as they are, so that we can say it is what it is, Peyton?
Well, first I'm reminded that the word for truth that Jesus used is a verb. And I think this is helpful. Truth is not something that's out there as a proposition. Truth is something that flows through us now in the unfolding one whole reality. And some of the words associated with this in his original tongue are ruha tashrada, which is spirit of truth, and nurha tashrada, which is the light of truth, or another way to feel it is the light of right direction. There is an inner GPS that we have that is only available intuitively, directly, not mediated through our concepts and language, but is actually something that can flow right within our core being, unobstructed. It can flow transparently and move us. And this truth, this shraddha, has properties of spontaneity and alignment. It happens in some way when we surrender our stories about stuff, our narratives about stuff. This is when the mind can become transparent enough to be receptive to ultimate truth. And ultimate truth is also resistant to sometimes being put in our pocket and taken with us. We can remember words about an experience. We can describe an experience. We can have images of something that we once recognized or experienced. But as soon as they become a memory, a story, a narrative, a characterization, a concept, something that we can transport and export toward others, they cease to be direct truth. They cease to be experienced now, moving, flowing, ultimate truth. Truth resists language. Truth resists portability and rigidity. Truth is something that flows and moves and is dynamic rather than static. And this can be frustrating for some of us that are left brained like me, that like to put everything in language and like to have a description and a story and a characterization and be able to put a concept somewhere within my map. But truth is a verb. Truth can be felt as alignment and moving wholeness. And language, on the other hand, is always inherently partial. Language is always inherently partial. Anything we say about something only points toward one side of it. And there's really this ineffability to reality that we can never fully capture in the map. The territory cannot be reduced to our opinions about it. And so, if we let our map become too opaque, if we hold on and, as the quote says, cherish our opinions too much, then even with the best of intentions, trying to cling on to something with a closed fist, we can accidentally block the flow of direct truth, truth that moves us and speaks to us in our whole being, truth of recognition of reality and how it flows within and throughout as one. This, I think, is the opportunity in softening our grip on our opinions, something that's not culturally conditioned by any means. This is sort of an unlearning that we must do and that we must remember to do again when we forget about it, because the left brain really communicates within these symbols and doesn't necessarily recognize that there is something more or something more ultimate. And the ultimate wordless truth doesn't win arguments. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't meet words on a level of words. It has to be some waking up that we have to see what is beyond our symbols and concepts, narratives, and map. So, how does one wake up to truth? How does one see truth when we see truth? How do we feel this? And what does it mean to recognize wholeness and to step out of partiality?
That's a big question, man. Yeah.
Go figure it out for us now.
Okay, let's figure it out. Okay, how do we wake up to what is true? Well, first we have to wake up to our limitations. That we never can know everything. We can know anything to a certain kind of depth, but we can never know everything because we just have one brain and we are so limited in our perceptions. We need to sleep. We cannot think all day long and make logical conclusions. And even if we could make logical conclusions, there would be some people with brains who could make specific conclusions much better. We cannot perceive all the possibilities that present ourselves as the universe unfolds, like this lattice work of opportunities, which in any point in time, as potentialities are able to be tapped into. But our brain is just an observer on one timeline. So even though physicists now, more and more physicists who do research at the edge of quantum mechanics and computational physics say, okay, the computer, like the universe unfolds at any point in time into uncountable possible universes, and it's ungraspable to us. So how do we get closer to what is true? Well, I guess it is the sourcing of multiple sources of being less wrong. First, we use methods like the scientific method to try to pose hypotheses that we can test with experiments, and then form theories and models, always being aware that our models and perceptions of reality very probably are very wrong, but we will hypothesize new ways in terms of shaping these models and theories so that we can test where they are wrong and then correct them at these points where they are wrong, so that we can try to get to the truth or try to be less wrong with the scientific method. So this is the first perspective, is awareness, just perceiving. The second is humbleness, and knowing that we probably don't perceive enough to be able to tell what is real truth, speaking of universal truth. And with this humbleness, we can hypothesize and use methods to try to enhance our view. And then if we are humble enough, and if our ego and our blind spots won't get into our way too much, we can source different perspectives, even perspectives which are even further away from what we know as a culture, as Western culture. Maybe these are perspectives from nature tribes who evolved in a different kind of setting, who evolved different kind of cultural habits, who evolved different kind of perspectives and ways to connect to nature so that they live their truth. And yeah, then again, if we have a theory, if it works for us, okay, I'm an engineer by trade. I believe in things that work. And if some things work, it doesn't mean they have to work at every place and every time, because it's only a point where it works, maybe. So we linearize the function in the work point, but we don't take into account oftentimes the non-linearities in the relations between the things which work together. So the finger which points to the moon by any means is not the moon, is just a finger which points to the moon. And this one story comes to mind. I think you told it to me, or it is about this atheist who tries to convince other people, oh, there is definitely no God because we cannot measure it, and so on. And the old guy stands up, bites in his apple, and says, okay, dear man, try to talk us out of the fact that there is a God. How did my apple taste? Well, I don't know. I didn't bite into it. Exactly. As long as you didn't taste how it is to be with my God, you cannot tell me nothing. So we go back to this very subjective perception of our reality, of our subjective reality, and try to paint the canvas in which we live with our values and our truths, and live accordingly. And what I believe is we find out what is valuable to us, what our values are, and live according to what we know is true to us, to ourselves. We will live a happier life than trying to chase all the cherished opinions and try to imitate everyone else and live their experience with what they share with their God. But in the end, it is our truth. It is our movie we live in. And other people who tell you anything else, I don't try to talk them out of their way of viewing the world, because the world is as it is, regardless of what you believe about it. But you will experience the consequences of what you believe about the world, because consequences will show themselves to you in your perception. So what is now? What is it about truth and subjective truth? It is a topic which is wide-ranging, Peyton.
Indeed. Indeed. Yes. I'm reminded in this moment there's phrase, "Wayun lamachike dinun nertun arach." And in English, this is commonly translated as "Blessed are the humble" or "Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth." But the original word machike doesn't mean meek by any means in our common usage of the word meek. Meek can feel like it means those who are a doormat, or those without courage, or those who do not stand up and speak the truth with boldness. It does not mean any of those things. Makike refers to an interior state of flexibility, a living with an open palm, a tendency and a posture of softening what is too rigid within us. And this, I think, is the posture that he's pointing us toward, of allowing ourselves to unfreeze, de-rigidify, and allow ourselves to be flowed with reality rather than asserting our own structures on reality. This can open ourselves to a different way of being where we are receiving and being moved in the same moment spontaneously with what arises as a part that's undivided from all that is arising. This is a description of being in flow. And in flow, in spontaneity, in open flowing, being moved, being breathed, receptivity, non division with reality, we can experience that creativity can emerge all on its own that we could never create. Wisdom can emerge all on its own that we can never create. Insights that we could never try to effort and manufacture on our own come to us as if from a source that we can't explain spontaneously and sometimes instantaneously. And so these postures of be flexible, trust, receive, become transparent, become flowed by reality. This can allow a system of flow, a system of integrated recognition, knowing, flowing, moving, being to move us that is aware and has a much, much greater computational power than our linear thinking brain could ever be. By putting one word in front of another, in front of another, in front of another, you gloss over 99.99% of reality if you live in the map. But when we can purely, directly commune with reality, commune with directly the one unfolding, and allow ourselves to be unfolded as a part of that one unfolding. This is living in unfolding truth. This is the verb of truth. And so this is a state that, or a way of being, or a posture, or an opportunity that I would love and that I intend to try to cultivate. How can I allow myself to soften what is too rigid within me? How can I cherish my own stories, narratives, opinions, fixations, and attachments so much less and allow them to soften so that something more wiser than I could ever do on my own can emerge all on its own, that I can never create, that I'm not doing, that I'm not manufacturing? This is what I want to orient myself toward this week. This is my intention. How about you, my friend? What is your intention as it relates to the verb of truth?
Well, I'll share the one that you shared with me. Not to be too rigid, not to be too firm in my opinions, but being open as well. But also with the realization that I want to be less wrong. Don't want to be right. I want to
Yes.
be humble enough to take in things which help me down the line, and then I want to share the quote which you shared with me, which relates to what you said right now. It's from Jo Zen, like a Zen quote. The breath comes and goes by itself. The heart beats by itself. You are being lived by a life that is much vaster than your personal story. And it's also,
Beautiful.
it's very beautiful. And this is also the hint to what I always say when I say, okay, trust your gut, because your gut is much older than you are. It's much older than we as individuals, because we as a species, as living beings, evolved like as emergent individuals from a life which has its way to come up everywhere. It's a life living us, through us, and we sharing narratives and stories and creating them and trying to grab them and grab a hold of them. But there's us as a part of something much bigger. So that may also be a reminder to not sweat the small stuff too much. And probably it's all small stuff. So maybe why don't we just live the way we think is right? Why don't we just live our truth? Not as rigid as our opinions form them, but as the verb you described, which Jesus talks about, as the living through us, as the breath and light which comes through us.
Wonderful intentions, man. Really appreciate what you shared. This is a helpful recalibration for me to have faith, to have trust, to allow reality to move as it is, and to try to align myself with it and open myself to it. So, that being said, let's remember this next time we forget.
Yeah.
Have a great week, brother.
Have a great week, man. Thank you very much. Appreciate you.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye.